Get going, you boys. Move it out of here. Move! Come on, move it out. No! Pull in here. Come on.
As far as he was concerned, no matter what you did, no matter how good it really was, it wasn't good enough. He was always reaching for that extra dimension that was beyond anyone's grasp, but that's the way he got good things, of course.
I love this dirty town.
But he worked in a kind of a world of his own. He really was the sort of mad professor, but very brilliant.
The weird thing about Burt is that when he comes into a room, I bet you can measure the temperament, and everybody's, the pulse speed of everybody in the room goes up, because you have a sense that you're in a room with something wild. He is, in genuine sense, that monstre sacré, sacred monster that has to be the quality of the major star.
Ealing Studios had simply faded away, and Sandy Mackendrick had to come reluctantly to Hollywood. The idea was that he should film George Bernard Shaw's play, The Devil's Disciple, which was something witty and dry and British and just like Ealing, but it didn't work out that way. It was the late 1950s when the old studio system was losing money hand over fist, and the only sure thing they had left in Hollywood was a star. So the stars were taking power, and the first of them was Burt Lancaster. He had his own independent production company, Hecht Hill Lancaster, and while Mackendrick waited for his three new bosses to get the Shaw play in front of the cameras, he was assigned to another property they happened to have on hand, the very American, very New York, Sweet Smell of Success.
We started shooting in the most terrifying circumstances you could have wished, which was shooting in Times Square at rush hour with a camera crane at twilight for that magic hour shot here, and 3 pages of script. And I was so scared out of my wits, in fact, that I had no time to be worried about anything except just getting it done.
The greatest tribute I can play to Mackendrick about Sweet Smell is the camera work that he did himself. I'll never forget saying to Sir Carol Reed, who I'd done one picture with, and we're going to do another, and it had to do with New York, and we were all set. Until until Carol Reed saw Sandy Mackendrick's Sweet Smell. And he said, Hill, we're wasting our time. There's nobody is going to film New York like Sandy Mackendrick.
I should say that the only reason why I would accept the compliment is that at the time, I think very few people had shot on the streets of New York. Now, it's much easier with the lightweight equipment that you've got, and faster film stock and so on. It's very much easier, and great films have been done in New York since then. But it was indeed one of the first attempts to shoot in the streets of New York, for real, as it were. Hollywood was getting very ingrown, and the people always wanted to build everything on the back lot. I think Alfred Hitchcock's Shadow of a Doubt was one of the few films that he managed to persuade them to get out and shoot on location. But in the case of this shooting in New York, Hector Lancaster were innovators in this respect too, in that they allowed me to go and learn about New York, and I was allowed to go out there with a cameraman and photograph the city, photograph the town, spending a good deal of money and doing an enormous number of photographs, and having a system for doing it. You stand in a certain place and you go click, click, click all the way around. And then you yourself, you don't allow anybody else to do it, stick them all up with Scotch tape. And you take these hundreds, thousands of photographs and take them back to your office and stick them on the wall. And you discover, looking at the photographs, something that is different from the experience of living there, because you always thought, it's great, we got the tower on this doorway, and then you realize you can't get them in the same frame. But the pictures tell you that. So gradually you begin to take down off the wall the pictures that aren't working and leaving the ones that are. And we did that while Clifford was busy rewriting the script. And I learned the image of New York and what worked. It's a simple technical problem. The impression of New York, if you've been there, is this extraordinary claustrophobic feeling that gets from the fact that there are skyscrapers right down there on top of you. But you can't show that. How do you show it? The only way to show it is by using a moving camera and getting it low so somebody walks up into camera and you see the buildings above you.
he was really brilliant, in our opinion, with the camera, the way he used it. Quite extraordinary. And one day he set up a movement. I say 42 moves, I might be exaggerating, but it was quite a lot. It certainly was 25 or 30 moves on a dolly, in which you moved into a close shot and you moved into side shots and you panned with different characters and all. For a scene that ran about 3.5 to 4 minutes on film, maybe 5, a fairly long scene, all in one shot, covering everybody. Well, of course, the crew went crazy, and they worked for about, I don't know, it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon before we started to shoot. We had rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed. The floor was a mass of tape marks where they had to stop, turn, go this way, move forward, move back, blah, blah, blah. And the scene involved the girl, Susan Harrison, Tony, and myself in Hunsaker, the character Hunsaker's apartment. And we did the scene. Sandy said, fine, do one more. We did it again. Fine. Did one more. And he finished that one. He said, all right, print that. He said, I really don't like it. I really don't like it. He said, let's take up all the marks. Let's start all over again. Well, in addition to playing the lead in the picture, I was also nominally, not nominally, but in a manner of speaking, the producer, because it was my company doing it. And I said, Sandy, I'm sorry, you can't do that. I said, we lost a day's work. I said, if you want to take the tapes up, you better take them up at 11 o'clock in the morning.
The whole business of making movies in Hollywood turned out to be so radically different from making films, certainly in the Ealing days and that kind of wonderful, who needs a theater, we can do it right here in the barn kind of attitude. I mean, here it was, even doing independent production, it was big and it was corporate and rule of committee and so on and so forth.
When Sweet Smell of Success was finished, and only then, Mackendrick could fly back to London to film his beloved Shaw. But what seemed like an ideal project turned into a disaster.
Sandy may disagree with me, but I have to tell you my version of it. In the hotel in London, as a matter of fact, Harold Heck said, Sandy, we have $1.5 million to do this picture. Can you bring it in 49 days? That was the schedule. He said, because if we can't do it, he says, the money has to come out of our pockets. There's no contingencies or anything of that kind. And we simply don't want to do that. He said, yes, don't worry, I can do it, and so forth.
Sandy got over to shoot the picture with the cast, and as I understand it, he was accused of being much too slow. He wasn't getting nearly enough up on the screen. And so it had to be Burt's decision, along with Harold, that they'd better remove Mackendrick as director of the picture.
When people want to unload a director, the easy way is to claim, that he doesn't know what he's doing. What often they really mean is that he's trying to do something that you don't want him to do.
But in any way, the real story is that we fired Sandy, and we fired him very reluctantly, because we were afraid he couldn't finish the picture in time.
Harold had the reputation of being very tough. He made pictures for a price, and he had a tendency, out of his own insecurities, whatever they were, to want to move on to somebody else if he felt he was in trouble. And in this instance, for some reason, he lost faith. When I say Sandy, Sandy has a great background. And I know with that background, I know if he'd have stood and fought, he had to keep that job. I mean, my God, if he'd have phoned me or anything else, I would have been over there. So I can only feel that for whatever reason, Mackendrick somehow, if it was only his subconscious, wanted to walk away.
In going back on these things that went wrong, there's something I'd like to say, in which maybe account for my certain reluctance in it. One of the things that I think is good about Hollywood is that nobody ever goes back and explains what went wrong. Because most of us in the movie business, I mean, half of our work goes wrong, or things that aren't made and don't get off the ground. But the tradition in the West Coast and in America in general is don't talk about the things that are wrong, get on with what's right. So in a weird way, Hollywood never fails because failures are simply put out of mind. They didn't happen.